Good evening, I'm Tomas Guevara, and this is the channel Rewriting Reality. In today's episode, 71, I'm going to explain what happens in our brain when we're in a state of creativity and flow and when we're not.
Subscribe to this channel to be at the forefront of scientific discoveries. There are chemical reactions that occur in our brains when we engage in certain states of mind, so to speak. In this, the science of neurology moves in the direction of classifying certain states of the brain when we are reaching states of euphoria or states of dissociation. What's happening in our physical brain when we enter the state of creativity and flow is that our attention is key, and our attention influences the function of the synapses in our physical brain. The spraying of the synapses, in what we would call a normal state, not a flow state, is almost, not quite, but almost, firing and spraying randomly. Because they're firing in many different areas of our physical brain, and they're firing and spraying at the same time.
We think we are expressing a thought process, a theme.
In our thinking, we only have one topic that we are thinking about, but this is not correct. Let me pause here before continuing. This topic arises regarding a question about reading the mind versus reading the energy. The energy reading is much more accurate, because if we could read the mind, which we can't, no one can, regardless of what they want to tell you.
In this, if you could read minds, it would be tremendously confusing. Essences don't read minds because they can't, but because it's tremendously confusing.
As human beings, we have between 10 and 20 topics of thought that move and express themselves at the same time.
It is the result of all the signals sent by our external senses.
We are always thinking about many different things, and in our thinking, although we have one primary line of thought, all other lines of thought are equally important to us. Therefore, to an external source, they are indistinguishable.
Let me continue with the function of our brain.
What's happening in our physical state is that both hemispheres of our brain are functioning in many different areas at the same time. Our thoughts don't originate in our brain, but our brain is a receiver for our thoughts, and the brain is translating those thoughts.
Since our thought mechanism is a translation mechanism, it is translating those thoughts into ones and zeros, the impulses, that is, electrical impulses of our mind.
We must also understand that our mind, which is immortal and is the same as our essence, is directing thousands of bodies, that is, other lives that we have in what we consider past and future. This is because time is simultaneous. These receptors, the synapses, in our brains look like tiny spiders.
We have thousands of tiny spiders in our brains.
And those little spiders are all shooting, and they're all spraying, and that do is hitting different grooves in our brain, and it's putting ones and zeros in those grooves. That's the information for our brain to do the translation. Now, what happens when we consume certain substances because we think they affect us in a certain way? They do, and what happens is that they stop the spraying of certain spiders and only a few continue with the spraying, that is, shooting.
Since our brains aren't firing all the time, these little spiders close and become inoperative.
Now, that doesn't mean they can't become operational, but what it does mean is that they require some time for us to reactivate them. We, so to speak, in our common vernacular, have to turn them on. We have to concentrate so that those synapses wake up and become active again because they are not active. Now, what happens when we're in a state of flow, which is, I would say, beautiful, is that all of those synapses are working, but they're all working in the same direction.
They don't just shoot randomly, they all move together in a flow. Our physical brain is actually generating harmony. It's beautiful. It's like a school of fish moving together. Or a symphony. That's what our brain does when we're flowing.
It's great to be in a state of flow, but we can move in a direction where it becomes unhealthy, where we become obsessive in that direction and move it forward and forward and forward. And in that, the way it becomes unhealthy is that it affects our physical body and our mental state when we're doing it alone. When we are too focused on a topic, we lose our sense of time, we forget to eat, and this can harm us.
Flow is healthy.
But not when he crosses a particular line of becoming obsessive and when we're alone. That's the point, is that if we're engaging in this state of flow, but we're alone and we're still moving in that state. We lose track of time, we lose track of our senses, and it's that our senses are also giving us information about our body. So, we are losing touch with our other avenues of communication. We are so focused on that one avenue of communication of the imagination, which is to inspire something natural with the imagination. But by being so focused, we can get lost. What happens if we keep moving in that direction? We can not only ignore our body to the point of harming it considerably. We can damage it and not even be objectively aware that we're doing it. Not only do we move in the direction of detriment to our physical body, but the information we engage in and the process we engage in also involve our physical brain. And our physical brain, just like our body, has limits. And in that, we can physically damage our brain by moving in the direction of being alone in that flow. It's very similar to involving substances, without involving a substance. We don't have to involve a substance to create the same kind of effect on our body and our brain. We can do it without substances. It's just one example of how this can happen. Just as we can cause damage to our body and our physical brain with other methods. Now, what the brain does if we move beyond a certain point in the flow, or engage with certain substances, is that the synapses begin to move into a cloud, so to speak, understandably. In that cloud, they react to the lack of encouragement because we have been too much in one direction and we have no external input. So, what happens is those little spiders start to shut down again because there's not enough stimulus, therefore our synapses stop working. We're not getting enough stimulation and we can damage those synapses. We can create damage to the neurological grooves and our neurological pathways because there is no longer a spray hitting them. It's like running an engine without oil. That's why it's good to shift gears in our flow. Switch to different themes and integrate with people, then get back into our flow. We don't have to do it quickly, but it's important that we're changing and that we're incorporating more subjects than just one. When we are in one, what is also significant is to include the challenge, and we can do it naturally. That is, it is not enough to be in flow and repeat what we already know, but to extend and go beyond what we already know, and incorporate new subjects. Flowing doesn't necessarily mean being relaxed. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel.